Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Exceptional Relationships. I'm your host, Jason Safford, founder and CEO of Exceptional Results Now, here with my gorgeous co host, Exceptional Relationships coach, Ronique.
Hi.
And, and today we are discussing, or actually asking the question, Ronique, is marriage overrated?
Mm-hmm.
And and as I pose the question to you, my intentions are really to explore marriage in and of itself. Is it an
Yeah.
institution? Because as Mae West said, marriage is an institution, and I'm not ready for an institution. So you tell me.
well, first we have to understand where the concept of marriage came from. No. People who read them Bible knows that it was a covenant between man and woman and God. However, as generations since those days, now we're into today's generation, marriage is something completely different. And what is going on in the world today is that a lot of people are getting married for all the wrong reasons. And what you find is that you don't really have those sort of marriages around, those sort of partnerships around that are people are together for like 20, 30 years. You don't have that in our generation, not barely anymore.
So
So
if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is that the dedication and
yes.
commitment
Mm-hmm.
that was expected or is expected, quote unquote, in marriage
Mm-hmm.
existed up until maybe 30 or 40 years ago.
40 years, exactly. And the thing
And then it
about it,
started to decline.
oh yes, and guess what? You know what? You know what the reason why? You know the reason why, right?
No, I
Because
don't. Tell me.
now, because now in today's world we have so many options, especially when it comes to online dating, where if something goes wrong in your relationship, the first thing you do is, oh, let's just download a dating app and see what's out there, and talk to a whole bunch of people instead of really sitting down and working through the problem with your partner and coming to some sort of a resolution. You don't really have anybody who really has that sort of attention span anymore to really tolerate really sitting down and discussing the problem and working through the problem and coming to some sort of agreement so you two can move on. Everybody is quick to go to dating apps when things go wrong.
I have to ask you this question as you say that. So do you feel, based on dating apps and all the other distractions that people
Mhm.
have,
Yeah.
that what has happened with the institution of marriage is
Hmm.
that people are no longer focusing on themselves and the person they're with
Hmm.
to the degree that's necessary for a marriage to last?
Uh-huh. Yep, that is very true. And no, we don't have those sort of situations anymore. Everybody's just quick to run when things get tough. And
Why is it so easy to run?
because I was gonna say that before. Um, what is going on? You see, with the advent of social media and the advent of taking pictures and taking videos so people can, so the wider world can see, and the wider world has input into how you live your life, whether or not you listen to what the outside voices are. There is there is a sort of pressure to maintain a particular image, and it's usually an image of this perfect relationship, this perfect life, this perfect lifestyle. And we all know that it's not real. So what is, well, from what I have observed, is a lot of times, a lot of people will look at these images and they want to emulate that quote unquote those relationship goals, when they really don't realize that it takes a lot of hard work, and it takes a lot of argument, and it takes a lot of adversity to get to the point where some people can post certain things. And at the end of the day, that's only one part certain people are showing. So why should we think that it's all perfect all around?
Yeah.
Because no, in life it's not easy. You have your hills and your valleys, just like every other situation. So why do we think that this is all it is just because that's all they're showing? You know what I mean?
You bring up a really good point, and I think that this is something for our listeners to really understand. And ironically enough, I just posted this on social media, or shared. Somebody else had actually posted it, and it was just so priceless to me, because it was from A. Milne, and who was the author of Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
And that was my favorite author as a child. I loved the whole series with Christopher Robin and
Christopher
when
Robin,
we were young. And this was a picture of Winnie the Pooh, Piglet, and Eeyore. And Eeyore was very sad, and he was depressed, and he didn't know necessarily why he was sad or depressed, but he just knew that he didn't feel good.
Yeah.
And Winnie and Piglet sat there with him.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, why are you sitting with me?" And he said, and they said, "Because we're your friends. And if you're sad and not feeling good, then we're going to sit with you." And that actually started to make him feel a little bit better.
Exactly.
And when you think of marriage and what that partnership is truly supposed to be, and you think, about historically, people got married and they had this bond, and they did it in presence of their family and friends. And that commitment to partnership was something where, exactly as you're talking about, if either one of them was going through a tough time, the other person, in committing to them, they say in health and in sickness, for better or for worse, in life and in death. And what does that really mean? Exactly as you talk about the roller coaster that we go through in life, the good times and the bad times. We have to sit with each other. And sometimes we don't necessarily have the answers. Sometimes we don't necessarily know what the right thing to say is.
Exactly.
But it's the fact that we're there.
Somebody being present, and somebody being there to say, I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer right now, but I am with you.
Yeah.
We are in this together. We are a team.
Right. So, that brings up modern day with distractions. You talk about, dating apps and all of these exit strategies that can so easily be accessed in a relationship. And again, marriage being the pinnacle. When we think about, a relationship is supposed to go towards this pinnacle of expression between two people, where you do, in a sense, bond with each other in a way that you don't bond with other people.
Yeah.
However, because of all these distractions, it's very difficult for people to come together that way and really commit to that, even though they're, doing it in front of people and doing it on paper. I want to bring up Kim and Kanye, just officially divorced, and this is a big public spectacle. But the reason why I bring it up is because, regardless of what anybody says, these are two people who, really did commit to each other, and they decided to have 4 children together. And in that of itself was a huge commitment, because obviously Kim's health was an issue in the delivery of those children, actually. But additional to that was her support of her husband through a lot of his, own challenges with his mental health, as well as some of the other things that he went through. You got to know this family, and they had this show, with the Keeping Up with the Kardashians, where you got to, see them intimately.
Yeah.
And that of itself exposed us to a world of an intimate relationship between two people who were supposedly bonded together in this pinnacle.
Yep, that's true.
But within that, there were so many challenges that obviously the outside distractions eventually caused them to decide not to.
Yeah.
And you could pick apart all of the things that they may have, done to sabotage their own
Mhm.
relationship. But I think that, this issue of marriage being overrated, my question to you really is, on that subject, is it really the fact that there's just so much going on today that it's really, really not possible to sit down with the other person and just figure out, okay, we're friends, we're bonded together, and
Mhm.
we're going to work on this together and really figure it out? Is that just not possible anymore?
Well, you know what? Here's the thing. You know what is going on? The mentality, the mentality and the value systems and the belief systems that would be the seed for that kind of action towards another person. I doubt it's there, but I know that there are people out in the world who were raised with those values, and they were raised with within that kind of a household where they saw two parents, and those parents are still together, so they know it exactly what a marriage is like because they grew up around it. But a lot of us, the majority of us, have been brought up in situations where the mother wasn't around or the father wasn't around, and or arguments between parents in front of children, or the parents weren't around entirely. So a lot of us were not raised in the kind of household where we would have seen firsthand how a marriage works. So, for example, for argument's sake, if I were to go to somebody and and we're speaking to each other in an intimate way, and I am talking about marriage, and he was never in a position where he even saw his parents in a loving, healthy, committed marriage, or a committed relationship for that matter. It is a very, very hard sell to sell him on marriage because he never grew up around it. No seats.
That's a great point. And I think that, to that point, let's look at the idea of marriage less in terms of the paper and
Mm-hmm.
the government contract, and
Yeah.
let's look at it more in terms of the verbal contract and the
Mhm.
real spiritual commitment between two people.
Exactly. And
So
you
if
know what happened?
Yeah, go ahead.
With the spiritual side of it, here's what marriage means in the spiritual realm. You are making oaths before God and before your friends and family. Say, I you me say, you, regardless of whatever it is, sickness, health, rich, poor, death, life, you.
Mm-hmm.
And I swear this in front of God.
Yeah.
That is what it is in the spiritual
And
realm.
and if I understand that correctly, and this is, this is going to be another episode. This gets into polyamory and open relationships. But if I understand that correctly, if you truly vow in front of your friends and family and everything else,
Mm-hmm.
then separating that vow from any piece of paper or government contract, that
Mm-hmm.
vow to the person in terms of your emotional and spiritual commitment, even if you were to separate, even if you
Exactly.
were to take on another relationship, another family in the future, your commitment to that person that you originally were with, you're always going to take care of them. You're always going to work
Vote
with
for that.
them. And, it's something where I think that is a big part of what's missing in relationships in general, is that, with every partnership, and this could be business, this could just be friends with, but using marriage, this idea of marriage being an institution, number one, but, is marriage overrated? I think what's overrated is that issue of it being an institution. And what's not really looked at is, why are you truly committing to someone in marriage? In other words, if you truly respect that partnership, you respect that person, and you respect yourself.
Yep.
Are you looking at it from, hey, regardless of what happens between us in the future, I not only like you as a friend, but, in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, until death do us part, I've got your back and you've got mine.
Exactly.
And I think that is part of what's misunderstood. And so I want to ask you this question: is that the fault of the church or the state, that we are, totally misinterpreting this, goal, this pinnacle of a relationship culminating in these vows and this celebration of two people wanting to truly look out for each other?
Well, you can't really say it's anybody's fault. Can't say it's the state. Can't say it's the church. It's just overall, people are going into these sort of situations either because it's a trend. They're going into it because of the trend. They're going into it for financial reasons. They're going into things, going into this whole institution called marriage for reasons that would not necessarily stand up. In the days of old, right? And sometimes a lot of us are just not cut out for it, and that is fine. So
what I hear you saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I hear you saying is that, and understand, there is a fault and it lies with somebody. And what I hear you saying is that the fault truly lies with all of us as individuals.
Yes.
For not truly looking within ourselves.
Yep.
And determining within ourselves, why am I truly doing this? Why am I making this commitment?
Why do I truly want to get married? Because it's not for everybody. It isn't for everybody. And so I was saying before, a lot of people will go into these other situations for all the wrong reasons. And then 1 or 2 years down the line, they'll say, oh my goodness, this was a wrong decision, and I really shouldn't have done this. Or even 5 years or even 10 years down the road. Usually those signs are there from before, but we just chose not to listen to it. And just because, the moment in itself is nice. We're getting proposed to. The wedding and the big celebration and the big parties is the,
yes, a lot of people look forward to. That's what they look at.
That's what people look forward to. That's what people look forward to. But nobody's looking at the work that it takes to make a marriage work.
That's right. They're not looking at the day after and the day after that and the day after that, right? Nobody looks beyond the honeymoon stage.
Exactly. And that is what happens when a lot of these quote unquote celebrities, or whatever the case may be, that when they get married and they get divorced within a year, that's usually what it is. They get, in the heat of the moment, they say, oh, I love this person. They don't even know if it's true love. And they get married, and then later on the line, another couple of years, and say, oh my God, I have to get divorced, or whatever the case may be, because it wasn't really the right reason that you went into it in the first place. Marriage is supposed to be for life.
Yeah.
This is a lifetime. This is a lifetime partnership, and take away the government contract and getting an agreement with the state or whatever the case may be, but the core of it, you are swearing before God. You are
Right.
swearing before God or Allah or whatever
Whatever the creator is in your mind. Yeah.
that this is the person that you want to spend the rest of your living days with.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever happened, and then you say,
You know,
right?
and I want to
So
I want to
a
point
lot
out
of
to,
people go, a lot of people go through this.
I want to point out that everything that you're saying, one of the big things is obviously this financial aspect to marriage.
Oh
Because a
yeah.
lot of people right now, and I'm sure some of our listeners, may attest to this themselves, but a lot of people right now, their troubles in their marriage, because of this global pandemic and how it's
Mm-hmm.
affected people's, personal livelihood,
Mm-hmm.
is the financial situation that people are struggling through. And how many marriages have dissolved because of financial strains, when
Right.
truthfully, that is when marriages should be working together even harder.
Uh-huh.
In other words, one of the most important things about a partnership for life, this better for worse sickness health idea, is
Mm-hmm.
that when there are financial strains, when there are huge challenges,
Mm-hmm.
individuals' ability to bring home money, that is when you get together even more as a family, even more as a partnership. And,
That is
and
true.
I think the other thing, and this goes to partnership in general, but we use marriage, is that when one partner, goes through any type of trauma or
Mm.
is involved in any type of heartache or hardship,
Some sort of adversity.
adversity, that is
Mm-hmm.
when the other person is supposed to support and supposed to help lift them up
Uh-huh.
by simply being by their side.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things about modern day, is exactly what you talk about, the exit strategies. The minute that one person isn't doing well, the other person's go like, bye, see you later.
Yep, that's true. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what would make you think that this is somebody you should have committed to
In the first
in
place.
the first place? And were the signs there all along that we weren't looking at?
Uh-huh. And they usually are. And in this global pandemic and what is going on in the world today, a lot of relationships are being tested because in you before all of this happened, you had all the distractions. You had work, you had money coming in, you had certain things going on that you really either a situation where you would have ignored the signs because you are so concentrated on other things, or you didn't see them all together.
Yeah.
Obviously, because you
You
see
know,
other things.
I want to point out something that Oprah Winfrey said, and it really applies in this case now that we're talking about it, which is
Mhm.
that your real friends because they'll ride the bus with you.
Exactly. Yep. And then
And
say, and there's another one. You know somebody's true colors when their backs against the wall.
right. And when you think about that in terms of being in this idea of a marriage, the ultimate commitment to someone else, for people to so easily look for the door, to look for the exit,
Mm-hmm.
especially in today's day and age with so much technology and resources to be able to distract yourself and get away,
Mm-hmm.
that is one of the things to look for right up front in terms of how you're establishing a relationship with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Is how easy is it for them to distract themselves from communicating with themselves? Now,
That's
forget
true.
about me, with themselves.
Exactly.
So I think that the one value as I hear you talking, the one value that I think about modern media, technology and all of these resources
Mm-hmm.
is that it gives us even more ability to evaluate a person, to
That's true.
discern what's
Mm-hmm.
really good for us, as
Yep.
well as, how another person is really healthy or unhealthy
Mm-hmm.
in dealing with themselves in good times and as well as bad.
Yep. And you know what? Once you know yourself, you are better able to read somebody else.
And, and these are the points that I think we hit on now. Every time we talk, we keep coming back to the fact that you really have to look inside yourself
Yep.
and learn yourself first and learn how to love yourself in order to really be with someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not your responsibility to teach them these things, but obviously, if you're teaching each other and you're helping each other grow, you want that,
Exactly.
but you also have a responsibility yourself to
Mm-hmm.
recognize that if somebody doesn't want these things or doesn't want to address them or learn or grow, that
Mm-hmm.
those are telltale signs.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ronique, we started this conversation with the question, is marriage overrated? Now, obviously, we've only had a half hour to talk about this, but I'm going to ask you again, do you think marriage is overrated?
It's not for everybody.
Okay.
Well, I personally wouldn't say that marriage is overrated. It's
Mhm.
just not for everybody.
Okay. So if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is that marriage itself, in your mind, is not overrated. However, marriage as an institution, as this necessary pinnacle that everybody needs to get to, is overrated. That people don't need to get to marriage to have healthy relationships
Nope.
and healthy lives. That
Nope.
what people really need is to understand the partnership and what that means in terms of being with someone else. What is
Mm-hmm.
the true commitment and partnership and
Exactly.
obligation that
Mm-hmm.
you are making to yourself as well as somebody else.
Uh-huh. That's very true. Yep. Yep.
And if you were to take this one step further in terms of obviously, separating yourself from this idea, you have your own beliefs in terms of marriage, but looking at it, because obviously future conversations are going to explore this, but looking at it from whether or not this idea of marriage can be more open in the future, that we can change this idea of marriage in some meaningful way or redirect it, slightly shift it towards a more open, exploratory idea of life and people and the world and the planet and where we're going. What are the things that you would you know share with people to consider looking at?
What? That? Let's see. What would I want to share? Overall, you have to know yourself. You have to know what exactly it is that you want, and you need to know exactly who you are on the inside. And once you have an understanding of who you are and where you're coming from and where you want to go is going to spill over into what you want, because what you want is where you're going, where you want to go, right? So don't take up anything like that you feel within yourself you're not ready for, because it's only going to lead to disaster. And just be true to you. Just be true to you. That is one message I would definitely love to carry on.
So if I were to explain that to our listeners, I would say that you need to truly be honest with yourself
Mm-hmm.
about who you are and what you want and bring
Mm-hmm.
that to the table,
Yep.
regardless of how scary it is, how much you fear the response or the reaction from other people. You have to
Mm-hmm.
have the courage and the resolve to go after what you truly want.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, you also have to be open to what the other person's wants and needs
Exactly.
are.
Exactly,
And
because that's all it is. It's a partnership. And once two people come together and they are completely honest with themselves and each other about who they are, where they are, where they've been, where they're going, and ultimately what their goals are in terms of self-fulfillment, you come to an agreement in terms of if the goals aligned.
yeah,
And if it's a situation where, okay, this person wants to have a family, this person wants to have children, don't necessarily have to be. Well, I am very traditional. I believe in marriage before babies, but a lot of people, they don't need to be married to have children, but at least they want to know that there is a commitment there, right? So, and that commitment is imperative if you're going to be wanting certain things in life. If you want to have a family, if you want to have a home, if you want to have children, there has to be some level of deep commitment there, whether or not you're married. So,
Ronique, I think you just presented something in a way for our listeners, and if I can interpret it, it really
mhm,
comes down to positive energy versus negative energy.
that's true.
And when you commit your positive energy towards somebody else and
Hmm.
say, I'm willing to put my positive energy into this relationship going forward every day,
Yep.
regardless of whether you're having a good day or a bad day, regardless of whether I'm having a good day or a bad day, regardless
Hmm.
of whatever life throws at us, whatever the circumstances are in the outside environment,
Hmm.
I am going to nurture with you
Hmm.
this positive energy in
Hmm.
our relationship
Yep.
to create almost like a force field
Yep.
around us to protect us
Hmm.
from the outside world, as well as from each other in terms of the negative energy that may come through us on a daily basis.
Hmm.
And because most people aren't looking at that, they're looking at marriage from exactly as you talked about: the financial, the emotional, the physical, the needs that they have for themselves that they feel are fulfilled from the other person. And
Yeah.
the minute that they're no longer fulfilled from the
Feel
other
feel
person,
first. That's when I'm
that's
gone.
when they're gone, that they're exiting stage left.
Hmm.
And so therefore they've never really fulfilled it within themselves, and they've never really fulfilled the other person. And the other person obviously can't really fulfill them, because unless you fulfill yourself first.
Exactly. Uh-huh. And if you cannot fill your basket, if you cannot fill your basket alone, how do you expect anybody to fill your basket?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, you know what it is that you need in your basket, because you're filling your basket all the time. You're inviting certain things into your life and into your spirit,
Yeah.
right? If you're doing all that work, so you know exactly what it is you need. If you know what exactly it is you need for you, somebody else who wants to be in that sphere will also know, because you are doing it for yourself,
Right.
right? So if you can't do it for yourself, how do you expect anybody else to do it for you? They're not gonna know, because you don't do it. So you
so
have to look after you first.
so what's really overrated is not marriage. What's overrated is the idea that somebody else can make you happy,
Yep, that's true.
and that somebody else can provide you the fulfillment in life that's going to make up for whatever you don't have within yourself.
Uh-huh.
That's what's overrated.
That is what is overrated. And we all need to realize that all that we need and all that we want and all that we want to achieve is within us. We just have to take the steps and do whatever needs to be done to bring that out into the physical realm, and we can see it in our lives daily. It all starts within us.
And and to this point, in terms of relationships, just to bring it back to the beginning, and obviously, you as a relationship coach, you lead from the heart. And so I think for our listeners, in wrapping this up, it's really a
Mhm.
matter of understanding how you get to know yourself is how you share with somebody else what you
Yep,
bring
that's
to the
true.
table and who you really are. What
Hmm.
are those tools that people really need to have to work on themselves? Um, are there any tools that you can share, in terms of questions or, um, things that they can look to? I know you mentioned, the 12 universal laws. Uh,
Hmm.
what are the, besides the 12 universal laws we're mentioning here, so people can start to look at there? Is there anything else that somebody could, really look at for themselves to find that introspection and then be able to come to the table?
First, ask yourself the question, who am I?
That simple.
That's simple.
Wow.
Ask yourself the question, who am I?
And write it
And,
down.
and write it down exactly. And the second one, what do I want? And
And
if it's marriage, if it's marriage, you write down your ideal person. And what you do after you write down your ideal person, write down the kind of person that this ideal person would need.
hmm
What you think this person would need in their life to succeed,
hmm
or to take themselves to another level in life. And you emulate yourself. You incorporate those things into your life so you can be that person. That is how you manage. That goes into what we were talking about before in terms of manifestation.
Yeah.
That is how we manifest. That's how we manifest certain things in our life. We have to know what exactly it is that who we are,
And what we need
exactly,
to become.
and who we want to become.
Right.
And whatever it is, whether it be a job or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever the case may be, you have to look at those things as well. Write it down, write everything down. And you ask yourself, okay, this is my ideal person. Who would this person need? Just look at it from take yourself. No, that is the point where you take yourself out of the situation. What would this person need in their life so they can be better? And
Fantastic.
then you write that list. And then you from that list you ask, do you have anything on that? Do you have any of that on that list? If you
Wonderful.
don't, work on it. If you do, then it's coming.
Ronique, I want to thank you for another wonderful episode. As always, I'm so grateful for you, and to our listeners, I'm grateful to you for tuning in with us and being able to share with us in this wonderful conversation. And I hope, again, we'll look forward to comments in the future, and let people, share with us their ideas of whether or not
Yeah.
marriage is underrated, overrated, or, you know,
Yes, we
whatever.
definitely would love that.
All
We
right.
need to start the conversation.
That's
So,
right.
to all our listeners, just send in all your feedback, send in everything so we can actually
A
have
dialogue.
a dialogue. So because at the end of the day, the reason why we put all this stuff up because we want everyone to be better. We want everyone to be whole and happy and healthy emotionally, so we can invite more positive relationships into our lives, because at the end of the day, that is what we need.
That's right. And we want everybody to achieve a level of, exceptionalism within themselves and their relationships.
Aha, yes.
All right.
Ah,
Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you soon. Love and
all
light.
right. Mwah.